I want to thank everybody for attending our luncheon. And I'd also like to mention our club luncheon sponsor, Albrecht and Albrecht Law Firm's been supporting this luncheon for several years now. So if you need legal help, please think about calling Albrecht and Albrecht. The goal of the club is to bring together all Democrats, from the most conservative to the most progressive, to celebrate our shared values, appreciate who we are, and to work together to put more Democrats in office. So our program today will deal with food insecurity in our area, and Brigham Wrinkle will be moderating, and I'll introduce her after we talk about the procedures for the luncheons just a little bit here. Everyone is asked to stay muted, so if you're not already muted, we'd really appreciate it if you could just stay muted. And so if you want to submit a question while the speakers are talking or afterwards, please use the chat feature on Zoom. And so send your questions to everyone in the chat window. There's a little drop down there. Make sure it's on everyone. And that will get to Brigham and she'll monitor the questions as we go along. And if you want a particular person to answer your question, one of our speakers, please note that in the chat. So if you're having trouble with your internet connectivity, you may want to disable your video. Audio only works better on some slower connections, and you just click on the video button until it shows a red line through the button. The Zoom meeting is being recorded and it'll be available hopefully within a few days for viewing. You can also choose speaker mode, which is typically in the upper right corner, which will bring up a larger video of the person speaking. And finally, while the La Plata Dems are okay on funds for right now, some of our biggest fundraisers have had to be canceled due to the pandemic. So I'd encourage everyone to donate to the county party. Monthly donations are particularly appreciated. If you go to Act Blue, you can set up a $5 or $10 or $20 monthly donation, and that makes it easy on you, and it gives the party a chance to see, what's coming down the road as far as donations. So this is our first club luncheon. Let me get the rest of these people in. This is our first club luncheon for 2021. The Club Luncheon Committee has been working to bring some great programs for the coming year, and I think you will really enjoy them. If anyone has any announcements to make, please enter something in the chat window and we'll recognize you at the end of the luncheon. Still admitting people. As I mentioned, Brigham Wrinkle will be our moderator for today's program. Brigham has been the executive director of the Community Foundation serving Southwest Colorado for the past 8 years. The Community Foundation focuses on increasing philanthropy by matching philanthropists with nonprofits and bringing professional development, capacity building opportunities, and grant prospects to build a stronger nonprofit sector. Last year, she and her team worked hard to get $1.25 million in rapid response grants for nonprofits during the COVID-19. So please give a big virtual welcome to Brigham Wrinkle.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. It's so quiet when you all are applauding. I'm just imagining a big applause. So my job today is to introduce some people who really had boots on the ground and really let them talk. But I thought I'd spend just a minute setting the stage and then really getting into the nitty-gritty with our panelists today. So in the time of COVID, food pantries and other nonprofits were serving vulnerable populations. They were seeing requests to quadruple and in some cases even bigger increases in a demand or an ask for food. We worked with local nonprofits to think about how the Community Foundation could help. We were so blessed to receive so many donations, and we knew we wanted to help food. And so we worked very closely, and my job is 5 County, but our guests here today, our panelists, are all from La Plata. But just to give you a scope of our Southwest Colorado community, what we heard back is that dairy was so needed. So many kids were home, so many families needed food. So we made a contract with Medigold, and we provided milk, butter, yogurt to 5 county food pantries. And we spent about $100,000 in dairy getting that out to 5 counties. The other need was shelf-stable food. Their shelves were bare. And every week they were bare again. And so we worked with Sarah, who you'll hear from later, to bring in some food trucks, and we got some matching grants, and we used SURF funds. We spent about $50,000 on shelf-stable foods. And Sarah did an amazing job really listening to what people needed. So we got tuna, we got canned chicken, we got vegetables, fruit. We really upped the game. We spent a little bit more, but we really thought it was important to have quality food on the shelves and these food pantries across 5 counties. Then we also really took it, and those of you who know me know that this is one of my favorite games to play. We wanted to support the ranchers and the farmers. So we went out to them and we purchased everything they had left with vegetables, locally grown, fresh, beautiful things, and got that to the pantries. Again, making sure that these people who are food insecure, who are also vulnerable, that we are evening that playing field, that we're making sure we're giving them quality food. They're an integral part of our community. It's important to give them good quality food. So we have, we got adobe beans, we got locally made tortillas to certain places. We got the Sunnyside meat is still serving our needs, but about, I'm trying to remember, I spent a lot of time learning how much meat came out of a butchered cow. That's not my training. So I was a bad position for me to be in, but I learned a lot. So we were able to give Sunnyside beef and these locally grown vegetables and some other cottage industry foods out to these food pantries. In December, we had another meeting with all of my five main contacts in each county. And we really saw that 2021 wasn't going to let up. So we really I had to cut back because there was no more vegetables to be seen that were locally grown. And we wanted to make sure while those kids were home and it was cold outside that people had access to good quality food. So in first quarter of 2021, we spent $80,000 on dairy, ground beef from Sunnyside and locally produced bread. We also designed a very exciting program, a future purchasing program. We're spending $80,000 with our local growers so that they will provide vegetables from June to October to these food pantries. And this helps stabilize our farmers and provide high quality locally grown vegetables and our food pantries. So I love those win-win programs when you can come up with them. So while all of this is so helpful, it's not enough. Today we have 4, maybe 3, I'm not sure, we'll see, organizations with boots on the ground. And these organizations will share stories about what's happening on the front lines. We're so lucky to have these dedicated nonprofits that are helping our community and battling food security every day. So just to be clear, everybody, each of the nonprofits are going to have about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And so I'm going to introduce Sarah Smith first. And Sarah is the executive director of the Durango Food Bank. And just in lieu of time and all the things that Sarah and Ann and Pam have to share, I really want to just go with that. So Sarah, I know you want to share your screen and take it away.
Thank you so much, Brigham. I do like sharing my screen because I like the focus to be on the slides, not me necessarily. So we'll kind of rush through that. I packed a lot of stuff in here, so I'm hopeful I can work through it, and it'll be kind of just a high level, quick run through of these slides. So can everybody see these okay?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. All right, so I just want to start with some basic information. So it's kind of a good thing to start. I can give some background about food insecurity in the Plata County, which I think is really important because a lot of times we hear about national hunger, not necessarily local hunger, and this is all relative to our county specifically. So it's important to note that this information is based on a 2018 Feeding America study. So while it's the most recent data, it is a little bit dated. It's estimated that there's 8.7% of our total population in this county experiencing food insecurity. The good news about that is that that's down 3.4% from 2017. So we are doing our job here in this community. All of these food service providers that are on this call and everyone that's making efforts towards eliminating food insecurity locally is having a significant impact, and it's clear when we look at these numbers from these studies. They have anticipated a projected increase for 2020, of course, because of COVID situations. They're estimating that food insecurity rate to increase to 12.2%. Something that I would bring up, because with our programs, we don't have income qualifications for our emergency food relief boxes. The reason behind that is that 34% of the population who's experiencing food insecurity are not actually eligible for public assistance programs. So they're making too much money to qualify for those programs. I bring up the average cost of meal typically because it just demonstrates the higher cost of living here in our area. So the average cost per meal here in La Plata County is $3.91. At 62 cents more per meal than if we look at the state average. And then 10.7% of the children in La Plata County are experiencing food insecurity. So something, you know, food insecurity is something that it's a term that's thrown around a lot. And I always say that food insecurity is when a household is missing one or more meal per day. So that's not, they went to bed full from dinner, they had a really big dinner, so they're just going to skip breakfast this morning. Those are families that don't have access to that food and have no way to get access to that food. I always talk about senior hunger a little bit. You know, we've got 1 in 8 seniors in Colorado who are food insecure. Most of those seniors are making difficult choices between paying utilities, paying for medication, and paying for food. So typically they are going to, you know, reduce the amount of medication that they're taking or take their prescriptions every other day versus daily because it's a way to offset the expenses. So, and I know I'm kind of rolling through this quickly, but 10 minutes is not very much time. So the programs that we're offering here at the Durango Food Bank is a curbside pickup currently. During COVID, we've transitioned through several different distribution methods. This is kind of where we've landed. And I think this is what we'll continue to do throughout the rest of the year for sure. So people can go online and they can make an appointment to pick up their food the same as they would if they were shopping at one of the local stores. Again, we don't have income requirements. They can do that twice per month. And at each visit, we're giving them at least 2 weeks worth of food. And as Brigham mentioned, there's a significant portion of that food that is fresh products. So dairy, meats, pastries, breads. They're not just getting a box of canned goods and that's it. So it's enough food for their families for 2 weeks, which is great. We also have implemented a home delivery program. So for individuals that don't have transportation, who are disabled or in that at-risk category, we're able to deliver food to their home through a contact-free delivery. And we distribute similar to what Pine River Shares does as well, the USDA commodities and then the USDA senior programs. And both of those programs are income restricted based off of USDA guidelines. So just to give you kind of an idea of where we're at as far as numbers, our monthly orders for the year increased 66%. Like Brigham said, it's important to note that there were months where we were seeing 150 or 200% increases, and those were primarily at the onset of the COVID pandemic where there was a lot of stay-at-home orders. So this is the average increase over the full 12-month period. So as we see things like the stimulus checks come in or unemployment check increases, increased work hours, those type of things, people are able to come in less frequently. So that the average increase was 66%. The individuals that we serve was overall almost 28% higher than the previous year. So I bring this slide up quite a bit because it's important to note how our orders are going out throughout the community. So you can see that we have a large portion in Durango, but we're also reaching the rural areas in Bayfield, Ignacio, Hesperus, Marvel, some of the outlying communities as well. The home deliveries, I'll touch on that a little bit more. We just implemented that in March as a direct response to the COVID pandemic. Through that program, we were able to distribute over 28,000 pounds of food, which is really great. A significant portion of those were in Durango, and I would say that probably half of the people we distributed to were people who were in quarantine because of COVID exposure or who were COVID positive. I want to touch on what Brigham had talked about with that semi-truck purchasing the non-perishable foods, because that was a significant portion of our role as far as getting increased food to the Southwest Colorado region. So the amount of food that was brought in on those 6 semi trucks was nearly 250,000 pounds of food. That's a huge amount of food coming into this community. And I'm so thrilled that it didn't stay just here in La Plata County, that it went to Southwest Colorado. So all the way from Pagosa to Cortez and everywhere in between. This food was valued at over $190,000. And we couldn't have done this without the Community Foundation and their participation through the SURF funding. So we're so grateful for Brigham and her efforts to make sure that we were able to bring that food in at a time where we were seeing unprecedented needs, not only here in Durango or La Plata County, but this community in general. We were asked to kind of talk about how everyone can help. And of course, monetary donations are wonderful and we all want those donations. But there are also other opportunities. So we're looking for volunteers. Right now, it's really important for us as we begin a capital campaign and kind of build upon that for a larger facility. We really need some active board members who are excited about our mission and interested in helping us expand into the next kind of phase of distribution in this community. So we're always looking for board members and volunteers to help with food distributions or special events. Networking is good. You guys are going to be getting a lot of information today. So taking that information and sharing it within your social groups is really important, because a lot of people don't realize that food insecurity is a real issue here in this community, and it's something that we all need to be aware of. So just sharing the information that you gather from everyone today, and then again, monetary donations, food donations, legacy gifts, those things are kind of consistent across the board. So I think that's all that I had, Brigham. I know that's a lot. I felt like I just flew through that.
And you did. Sarah, there was a couple of questions directly at you if you could answer. So people have asked, when can they drop off food donations? And I know Tuesdays is a bad day because you're doing distributions, but what days would you like them to come by?
So we actually have our drop-off hours on Monday and Tuesday all day long. Tuesdays we are here from 7 a.m. all the way till 6:30 p.m. So anytime in that window is okay, because our volunteers are so efficient anymore with this process. And then we have morning drop-offs throughout the rest of the week. So the only day we're not receiving donations is on Sunday. We are encouraging contact-free drop-offs still at this point. So we're asking people to just leave the food at the door, knock loudly, and then a volunteer will come out and receive that and process that. If there's a need for a donation receipt, of course, we're happy to do that as well. And everybody wears face masks and that sort of thing here. But we're still trying to be conscientious of the COVID concerns and make sure that we're not, engaging with people unnecessarily.
Awesome. And there's probably some more questions I'll ask later. I just wanted to clear up those couple. And then Gwen, to answer your question, yes, the Durango Food Bank does cover all of La Plata, but they also have partners. And so the next person we're going to hear from is Pam from Pine River Shares, and she's one of those partners. She's really focused on the Pine River Valley. She does Arborlees, Bayfield, Ignacio, and not just food distribution. In fact, that's not what she really wants to focus on, but in this time of COVID we have. But she is such an engaging, devoted advocate for the people in her area. And I'm going to let her take it away because she's got so much to share.
Okay, turn the timer on, Brigham. Give me.
I've got it. I'll be giving you one of these.
Yeah, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, and thank you guys. This is a great group. I'm really honored to be here with the other panelists and Brigham and you guys. So yeah, I thought I'd start out by saying, introduce you to Pine River Shares in case you don't know who we are. We serve the Los Pinos watershed. No, we're not a water court, but the Los Pinos watershed is a group of, anyway, it's the Pine and the Vallecito, up from Vallecito all the way down to Navajo, and all of those communities. 275 square miles in the Pine River Valley, 14,500 people, and there's probably more than that now. We have 2 towns, Bayfield and Ignacio, but there's not 4,000 people that live even if you put those 2 towns together. So what that tells us is most of the folks that we are working with, the communities we work with, are far-flung, and people live in really remote and remote areas. And so our mission is to bring together the knowledge, skills, and resources of people in the Pine River Valley to increase our collective power and bring about positive social change, resulting in healthy, thriving communities. So of note, I said nothing about food, but we are about focusing on how we can help strengthen the communities out here who have shared resources, shared history, shared the land for a very, very long time. So when we first organized and we began asking people, what is the biggest barrier to your ability to thrive in the Pine River Valley? The thing that we heard consistently is access to affordable, healthy food. We heard other things that makes the food insecurity symptomatic of the other things. So it's like jobs and not good paying jobs, low paying jobs, not enough jobs, jobs far away, inadequate transportation to get to the jobs, geographic social isolation, health issues, access to healthcare. Those are the kind of issues that we heard are the biggest barriers to being healthy and thriving in the Pine River Valley. And so unlike some organizations, we go to the people who are experiencing whatever that issue is or the problem, and we gather them up and we say, okay, what does that problem look like? So in the case of food insecurity, we began hearing that so often, we gathered people up to say, what does that look like? Where is food insecurity coming from? Why are we food insecure? Where do you get your food resources? And what would you like to see done differently? And from that process, those folks develop the ideas and the programs that we implement. So we don't really have a staff. They have me and Sarah, who are directing 65 volunteers that contribute nearly 5,000 hours collectively to gobs of projects. We have 8 network leadership leadership networks, and out of those networks, they develop all kinds of programming that meets the needs of communities in the Pine River Valley. Some of them are specific to geographic areas, most of them are not. And the food issues that we are facing are affecting everyone out here. So that is a very large group. We have a Food Equity Leadership Council that is comprised of people that are food insecure, and they're the ones who help decide what our food programming looks like. They implement that, and we pay a stipend for their leadership and time in evaluating those programs. So that's just kind of how Pine River Shares rolls, So when we weren't surprised that when COVID hit, that our food insecurity and all of our programs took a hit, and there was a huge demand. But I'd like to talk about where some of our food programs are, our current food programs are, and then how they've been impacted by COVID. We have a weekly food share program here at the Bayfield site. We're located in the old primary school here in Bayfield. That's a block off of Mill Street. We have like 6 classrooms here, and we serve our weekly food program right outside this door. People line up 11 to 1 every Monday. Similar to Sarah, there's no income guidelines, and people can come every week, and they will get at least a week's worth of food. Very similar to what Sarah described. There's produce and proteins and meat and all the stuff other than canned goods that we put a high value on. We also provide all kinds of other things: toiletries, soap, toilet paper, whatever people need of that line. We have long tables sit outside of our office, and people just kind of drive their car up and we load their cars that way. We also do the same thing in Ignacio every Saturday. So Mondays 11 to 1 is a weekly food share in Bayfield, and at the El High Community Center in Ignacio every Saturday. And we're packing about 400 bags a week. So 400 households a week are being served. Let me see. That's running around 1,200 people a month receiving those food bags. We also have a backpack program in the schools here in Bayfield, in 2 of the schools in Bayfield. And we're serving between 400 and 500 backpacks a month in those schools. Each backpack contains 6 meals. And when school got funky and was out, and some kids were online and some kids were not online, and inline, all that, we set backpacks out in our lobby. So we're serving, that's why our numbers just skyrocketed, because we're serving probably 50 to 60 backpacks picked up out of the lobby every week, in addition to the ones that are being served out in the schools. And then as Sarah mentioned, we have the monthly USDA commodities. We're running about 150 households to pick up commodity food every week, and about 70 senior boxes are distributed every month. I'm sorry, those are monthly programs, and those are income structured. So that's food programs. And then we also do home deliveries. We're up to about 30 home deliveries every week. So this was like, you know, we were running all these programs before, but they skyrocketed. So for example, in January of 2020, we were serving 700 people a month in our food programs, January 2020. By December 2020, we were up to 2,300. I'll just let y'all sit with that. I'm not smart enough to be able to figure the percentage increase, but I don't even think I want to know. It's just a gob of people. So what that meant for us is we had to double our food storage and inventory space. We had to get commercial freezers, commercial refrigerators. We doubled the number of people helping us. We hired a temporary COVID relief staff from some of the teenage youth leaders that have been working in our food programs before to help assist with that. And currently we have about 15 teenagers from the high school that are doing primarily all of the packing, the COVID safe packing for us every week. And then the distribution is happening with our volunteers out of the sites that I mentioned. So I don't even know how to describe, you know, this increase that has happened to us, you know, but we are so blessed to be able to do it. The people that we serve each week are also bringing food to us each week. We are very much reminded that we're in an agricultural area. So when we began working on food security issues a number of years ago, the farmers in the area were saying, but you know, we don't need to do it this way. We used to not be food insecure in the Pine River Valley. And so 3 years ago, we set about the task of building a plan to eradicate food insecurity long-term by building an independent healthy food system in the Pine River Valley. We studied the historical record for over 100 years to find out how food was grown out here. There used to be 3 grain mills, 8 creameries. Everyone was growing food for themselves and their neighbors, and they met on the granges to share that food. And so we're very excited about building this long-term solution so that we're not doing food support in the way that we're doing it right now. So this year we gave away 20 victory gardens in the springtime. It's a partnership between the Ignacio High School that built the boxes and the garden club here in Bayfield that provided the vegetable starts and the seeds, and a local soil maker that provided soil for all the boxes. So we're working to increase production with farmers. We have relationships with the farmers out here. We buy from them. We invest early in the season, like right now, so that we can guarantee fresh food in the growing season. And we also sponsor an annual fruit tree harvest. And this year we harvested about 8,000 pounds of apples from the downtown Bayfield area and turned that into 100 half-gallons of cider and 100 boxes of apples. And we're able to distribute that free to our community as well. So bring up these kind of long-term solutions, because I think that's where we see ourselves, is building out a healthy food system that takes care of everyone. So we're not struggling with canned goods all the time. Anyway, I may have questions. I've probably talked beyond my time. But,
No, Pam, that was absolutely perfect. And you touched on all the things I was going to prod you to do if you didn't. There's a really interesting question, which I think you'll like, and that is, are there seed exchanges? And then you and I have talked about that a little bit. So do you want to answer that before we move on to Anne?
I know there are seed exchanges going in lots of places, especially on the West Slope, and I would have to defer to our Pine River Garden Club. They've got a Facebook page. We don't try to do something that a good partner is already doing, so they are doing the seed exchange over there, and I would refer you to their Facebook page, the Pine River Garden Club. So,
Great.
yeah, if someone mentioned gardens, so we will. We're investing in a lot of that this year. So we will be having gardens on the grounds, planting in the springtime. We anticipate a greenhouse going in the springtime, and we're working with the town of Bayfield to start a heritage farm. So we're actually able to promote more homestead food production, like teach people how to have their gardens, teach people how to, not just have gardens, but have chickens and maybe dairy goats and produce some of their own food in the ways that we used to do out here when we had food for everyone. So those are projects on the horizon that you can take note of as they come on.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. Of course, stick around for questions and answers later, but I want to introduce you to our third partner or panelist on this sort of unseasonably warm day, and that's Ann Morris. And Ann is the executive director at NANA. And Manna has been just an unbelievable partner and such an incredible listener. And I just want to call that out, that they spend a lot of time listening to the people that they serve and coming up with solutions, which is, I'm not sure, and I'll touch on it because we're supposed to talk about food, but keep your ears up because Manna has really launched a new strategy. And it's because of their close attention to listening and trying to find ways to solve problems. So Anne, with that, I'll take it away.
Thank you so much. And it's so great to see everybody, since we are not having volunteers right now on Manna campus, but it's so great to see so many familiar faces. So I just want to say hi. The mission of Manna is to provide, in the spirit of faith and love, nourishing meals and supportive services in an atmosphere of acceptance and caring for those in need. So that really drives our objectives, our goals, and our mission. And through this last year, we've definitely learned a lot. And I'm gonna touch just pretty much on our food security programs. And so since March 18th of 2020, Manna adopted our operations to COVID restrictions, and we began to start serving our daily meals outside. So we closed our dining room doors and we started setting up kind of a station in the back that we set up and break down every day. So we've been providing these daily meals 7 days a week between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. And just to give you numbers, in 2019, we served 56,156 meals. In 2020, we served 96,679 meals. So almost double the amount of meals that we served in 2019. This, just like Sarah and Pam both mentioned, we've seen about a 2 to 4-fold increase in food security in La Plata County since the start of the pandemic. Here at Manna, we've just seen so many more people. We've seen the people that we've served for years, and we've seen people that we've never seen before. So it really shows you, that so many people have been affected financially throughout our county, and that food insecurity really has increased. With these daily meals, we also, similar to Pam and Sarah, provide hygiene products. We also do a lot of winter clothing that people have access through, either through just coming up, grabbing a daily meal, and through having additional tables set up, or we're also still open so people can knock on our door and we can provide them with additional supportive services as needed. We do emergency food boxes, which people can access 7 days a week when we're open during hours of operation. And for emergency food boxes in 2019, we distributed 289. In 2020, we did 533. So there again, you just see the numbers skyrocketing. We do some deliveries, for instance, to Lumium, where we do weekly food boxes. Therefore, because one of the biggest barrier we see is transportation for people. And so it's being able to get here to Manna or to the food bank. And just like Sarah's saying, providing that extra delivery service is just so important. So we've been doing that. We also do bulk grocery deliveries. This is something we've never done here at Manna before, but what it is we're working with partner organizations such as Companeros and La Plata Family Coalition Centers, where we do weekly pickups. So they have select lead volunteers that come to Manna at a certain time of day and actually pick up a truckload of groceries or daily meals, and they actually then take them to their program participants to their houses. And so this has just been really extremely helpful, not only for Manna, but for these partner organizations to really get additional food out. And it's just been amazing. So for me, it's one of the positive aspects of everything that's happened in this last year is us, building and strengthening these partnerships. So we're very fortunate with that. We've also been able to secure funding through a food pantry grant that we had last year, and we actually received funds this year, which we were able to, similar to what Brigham was saying about buying food directly from the farmers and supporting their efforts. We've been able to buy food and then directly get that to either families and individuals in need, or the last food pantry grant, we worked with Compañeros to make sure that their specific families who were really need in this fresh produce got it. We also do deliveries of COVID for people that are COVID quarantine. So we work with the Department of Human Services and either do food boxes or daily meals to certain individuals. We work with Nina and the Vineyard Church and Southwest Rides to provide meals 6 days a week to the Purple Cliffs. So we do these daily meals. We also provide additional hygiene supplies, clothing, and then bulk food. And that's just been another partnership because with having limited staff, we're not able to do these deliveries. So it's been great partnering with these other organizations to do that. We also are very fortunate to have a garden. And so this year we were able to produce 2,114 pounds of fresh produce. Then that got distributed both in our meals and then also in these food boxes. In the past, we were able to do like a manna market, which we're hoping to do something similar this year. But with COVID, we just had to find different ways of distributing the produce. We also work with 9R School District and the Southern Youth Boys and Girls Club, and to provide backpacks. So these are bags full of meals for the weekend. And we've worked with a lot of other partnering organizations such as the payroll department. We were very fortunate that they gave us a grant to also support our efforts. And with the backpacks in 2019, we distributed 6,451 backpacks. In 2020, we distributed 9,416 backpacks. And this was the first year that we also were able to distribute backpacks during the summer when the school was closed. And that's just such a valuable partnership with 9R. We've also started doing a lot of work with Fort Lewis College with the Grub Hub. And so we've been providing meals and then also these backpacks up at Fort Lewis because this year they actually had food security as one of their priorities and realized that about 35% of their population that goes to school there is experiencing food insecurity. So that is another partnership that we are working with. And it's just been great. We've learned a lot from our partners. We've been participating, just like Sarah and Pam, in a lot of meetings with other organizations, just trying to connect where the gaps are and who needs additional food and getting that resource to them. And I think that is pretty much all I have. If there's any questions, thank you so much. Oh, I do have what you also asked us how people can support our efforts. And obviously, as Sarah and Pam touched, money is always great. We accept food donations Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then on the weekends from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. We also accept hygiene supplies, winter clothing, camping gear. And also, I think the big thing for me this year is one thing we really learned is the stigma associated with food security. And so I really I'm so happy we're talking about it here today, but encouraging everybody to let people know that are in need where the resources are. And then also, I don't know how to do it, but, trying to break down, this stigma associated with food security and just getting people access to the resources they need. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. That was a lot. Anne and Sarah and Pam, you all did such a great job trying to boil this down into a nutshell. It looks like there's some comments. I'm looking for questions, but Anne, I wonder if you couldn't spend a minute maybe updating this group on your new direction It might be the first time many of these folks have heard about that. And, maybe just your elevator, because I know it gets very complicated very quickly, but I just think it's so innovative, and I'm just so proud of your board for doing strategic planning during COVID. I mean, that takes some dedication.
Thank you. We're very fortunate. We have a great board of directors and an amazing staff. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do strategic planning during the last 6 months. Through this strategic plan, we learned a lot through COVID. We learned a lot through the La Plata County and City of Durango. They did a strategic planning process for people experiencing homelessness a year ago. Well, I'm sorry, in 2019. And we were able to participate in that. So the knowledge we gained from that process, plus the knowledge we've gained with currently adapting our current operations to COVID, really talking to our program participants and learning what works for them, what doesn't, realizing that we had limited hours for people to receive food, that the soup kitchen itself was a huge barrier for people regarding stigma and coming in the door, because people didn't want to be identified going into a soup kitchen. So we've seen with these daily grab and go meals, so many more people. We see people driving up in their cars with their families, grabbing meals. By talking to Companeros and La Plata Family Coalition Centers, we realized that a lot of people want to take their food and eat it at home. Whether to enjoy it with their family, whether to create meals with their family. But there's just so many different aspects to how people would like to receive the food. And so through this strategic planning process, what MANA has decided to do, and we're in the very early stages, but we are going to do a remodel of the soup kitchen dining room. And we are going to, instead of calling it a soup kitchen, we're going to have a community kitchen that has two aspects to it. It has a takeout window. So it's going to have where volunteers work this window, and people can come up, 7 days a week, grab the meals that they want, plus, get additional supportive services like socks, hygiene supplies, check their mail. And so it just allows this access and this ease and comfort for the clients to receive meals. The other piece is we're going to be doing a food market. So instead of boxing these emergency food boxes or have pre-boxed food, or the staff or a volunteer decide what food this person needs, it brings back this dignity model and also a sense of choice, where the program participant will be able to select on their preferences and also their dietary restrictions. So they'll be able to enter this food market, pick what they need. We'll still track it through poundage, and then they can leave. And then the other piece of the soup kitchen dining room is going to be more of a resource center. So similar to what we've done in the past with providing people with supportive services, but taking it really to the next step and providing case management and also next steps to housing and employment. We will be working with a lot of partner organizations to make this happen. And so that's kind of hopefully in a nutshell, letting you know where we're going. So we will be remodeling the soup kitchen, and after that, we will be bringing back the volunteers and our clients, and having a lot of the aspects of what we did do of MANA, but kind of expanding and improving some of our programs.
Great, thank you, Anne. I just think it's just brilliant and exciting new step. The day in the life of an executive director is very unpredictable, but we do have a fourth speaker. He has joined us, and he is going to share with us. It's Matt Carke, and he's from Los Compañeros, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what they saw through COVID. So without further ado, Matt, the screen is yours.
Ta-da! How do you like that?
I love it.
I've been waiting to do that. I usually take, I've been trying to find the most comfortable setup for Zoom calls. And I've discovered that standing up is like the best option as far as it goes for me. I have this like nice standing desk over here, but I actually have like set this up in a different place so that you can have this nice background of these dark closet doors. I thought this was better than the semi-chaotic disarray that is behind my working desk. But thanks so much for having me. As Brigham said, my name is Matt Carkett. I'm with Compañeros Four Corners Immigrant Resource Center. And we've also been doing a lot of stuff through COVID, a lot of interesting food insecurity programs and services. And it's been pretty unpredictable. Definitely, that is a really good word to describe it. You know, when this whole thing started, we were kind of in a very different zone with what kinds of programs and services we offered. We were doing in-person trainings, we were doing in-person workshops, teaching folks in our area to, you know, find resources or get driver's licenses, you know their rights so that they know what to do if an immigration agent apprehends them. And we also held like big fiestas every month with food and Zumba classes and yoga and dancing. So COVID made us change a lot. It was a totally unpredictable thing when this started, and we had to kind of completely change directions. You know, we were looking this way and then we had to turn this way. Food insecurity was a big thing at the beginning. A little overview of what we do. We provide a lot of critical services for immigrants in our area. That's kind of the base thing for those of you who don't know our organization. But a lot of our clients, a lot of immigrants in our region work in industries that were very heavily impacted by COVID in the beginning of the pandemic. Things like hotels, things like restaurants, things like tourism. And so what we saw was a lot of folks losing their incomes, a lot of folks who already live on the edge, who don't have a lot of savings, all of a sudden having the rug pulled out from underneath them and not really having what they need to continue providing for their families and paying their rent. So early on, one thing we started doing was working with Mana Soup Kitchen to deliver their delicious meals to folks in different neighborhoods around town. We partnered with La Plata Family Centers Coalition as well to coordinate those drop-offs and work with you know, people from those neighborhoods to help get those food items out to people who need them, as well as other things like, you know, cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, diapers. You'd be surprised how many diapers people go through. You know, since then we've kept changing a little bit and addressed some new issues. You know, folks needing more economic assistance and rental assistance. We've moved in the direction of partnering with a couple different agencies that offer those kinds of things. But definitely, you know, unpredictable is like one of the best words that I think you could use to describe the life of an ED in 2020. And we've learned a lot through it. We've made a lot of friends through it. We've made a lot of great partnerships. But it's you know, it's a learning process, and we're going into 2021 hoping that certain things will get better, but also happy with some of the new partnerships and collaborations that we've been able to get together, like working more closely with Anne and Mana Soup Kitchen. That's something that has kind of come out of the circumstances in which we found ourselves through COVID. So, hi everybody.
Great. And Matt, one of the things that this group has asked you guys to address is, where do you need help? And what kind of different layers could people insert themselves in to help the organization?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, you know, there's various things. You know, we just recently held a clothing drive, and we held a winter clothing drive for folks in the community who might not have a lot of warm winter stuff. And so one way in which a lot of community members helped us out was by donating some old or some lightly used good condition, like jackets, boots, snow pants, sweaters, things like that. We gave out a couple hundred items. It was about 2 or 3 Saturdays ago, and served a bunch of different people a lot of clothes to make sure they could stay warm through the winter. Occasionally, you know, during non-COVID times, we also have volunteer opportunities for folks interested in working with us. Everything from a Spanish-English conversation club, which for obvious reasons is not continuing anymore, but which we hope to get going again after the pandemic, to just helping with events or, you know, any other type of thing we need. And then, of course, we always are looking for donations and monetary support for what we do. We're a small nonprofit, and we have some challenges to getting funding based on the fact that we serve undocumented immigrants. A lot of government funding and government nonprofit funding is out of our reach. And so we really depend on the support from people in our community and private foundations and donors and things like that. And so we're always looking for that kind of support as well.
Great, thank you. There's a question in the chat, and I'd like to give all 4 of you an opportunity to answer. It's from Lori, and she says, what advice would you all give to the community leaders on addressing the underlying causes of food insecurity in our area, COVID aside? So, you know, really thinking about those underlying causes. Does somebody want to go first, or do you want me to call on you? Sarah, go right ahead.
I'll go first, Brigham. So one of the biggest things that we see consistently with our clients is the need for affordable housing or income that matches the expenses for living here. So we see so many families who have two parents working full time, but still most of their check is going to the basic expense of your housing. So that doesn't leave really much left for them to deal with food issues, let alone things that are more important for them, or not more important, but oftentimes essential, like medical utilities and just the basic needs. So we don't see families that are really living extravagantly. And I think that's the big misconception, is that people are just mismanaging their funds. So if we look at somebody who is a service industry worker in this community who is making minimum wage or even a Thrive living wage, they're still really struggling to get by. So I think affordable housing is one of the largest concerns that we see here at the food bank, followed really closely by affordable childcare, which is another thing that families really struggle with. So it's almost not worth many families working, because most of their paycheck goes towards childcare for families with younger kids. So those are the big things that we see consistently with clients here.
Great. Pam, what do you have to add to that?
Sarah summed it up well. I think we see a lot of folks out here that are priced out of the Durango area for the very similar reasons that Sarah just described. I say all the time, we don't serve anybody that doesn't have a job or a place to live, because, you know, it's kind of hard to do that out here. So these are people who are working a lot of jobs, usually more than one job. And we see the people just on the margins. So I think that's why we have to couple the food support with so many other kinds of service, financial services, help people pay bills. We've got a thrift shop, you know, all kinds of other things, because the slightest thing, you know, you need the tires, you need new tires on the car to be able to keep all of your jobs up. So we're oftentimes buying tires, you know, so for car people to be able to even get to the food bank. So if you're in a rural area, you have to factor in that transport. So I think, yeah, living wages, good jobs, you know, that kind of infrastructure. It's people talk about an unfair economic system a lot. It's unfair. I'm working so hard. Why is it this way? I'm working so hard. So I think, yeah.
Great. Matt, what would you like to add?
Well, I think all those things are they're the same things for the population we're working with. They're the same thing we see in our clients, of people not having livable wages, people not having affordable housing. The only thing I might add to that in relation to the folks we work with is also issues related to, you know, their immigration status. The fact that this I guess would be something that would be less of a county-wide thing, but just in general, we live in a country where many people have no path to legal citizenship. You know, no matter how long they lived in the United States for, no matter, you know, how many dues they've paid, no matter what, you know, how good they've been, really. Some people just have no legal path to citizenship. And that means that they can't get any kind of, you know, government social safety net resources that might help them avoid food insecurity, such as, you know, food stamps, such as Medicaid, such as unemployment benefits, all those things that maybe are not directly food related, but which alleviate a lot of the pressures that come from poverty and living in low income. And so that's a bit broader, I guess, but that's an effect we see in a lot of our clients, is just the fact that they can't get any type of governmental aid because of, you know, living in a country where there is no legal path that they can follow to get to a place where they have them.
Yeah, navigating that's a tough thing. Anne, do you want to wrap us up with this? And is there anything you want to add or any nuance that you want to share?
And like everybody said before, that was just amazing answers to the question, because we feel here, you know, one of the root causes of food insecurity is poverty. And so obviously everything everybody was saying was right on. Transportation seems to be a barrier also, living in a rural community. And so, you know, a lot of people live more in an area that might be a food desert and don't have transportation to access some of these resources. So we see that. And then we also work with people experiencing homelessness. And there's usually a few more layers of barriers. They're not able to get housing or a job yet, because like Matt was kind of saying, well, maybe they don't have identification. Maybe they need, you know, some assistance in getting mental health appointments or, you know, health issues. So there's just a lot of those different layers also involved.
Great, thanks, Anne. Gwen, I'm gonna look to you to give us some guidance. It's 12:57. Is this a good time to wrap up? Should we ask a few more questions? Where are you on this?
I think we can go a little longer, but before people start leaving, when it comes time to thank our participants for what they put in today, the best way to thank them obviously is to provide support. And when the committee started talking about setting this up, we said, you know, what, as Brigham mentioned, what can we do to help? And I know that the people that are on this meeting are people who want to help. And so, for instance, if you got your stimulus check and it's not really something that you need, perhaps, you know, it would make sense to donate that money. Or if you're in a position where you can provide assistance, if you can do transportation or pack meals or whatever, I know that the people that are on this call are the kind of people who want to do those things. So, you know, when we get to the end where we're thanking them, again, you know, let's see what we as Democrats can do to really help the community, and not just the organizations, but the people that, you know, when you're talking about people that don't have enough food, that's a problem. You can survive with just about anything except, you know, not getting food. So Brigham, why don't you just go ahead? If you've got a couple more questions, we've got a little more time.
Great, great. I would love to ask the question. I've worked with all 4 of these organizations throughout COVID. I would love to hear from you how the community has supported you. Maybe the grants that you've gotten that you might not have gotten because they were COVID related, the increased donation. I think it's also really important for all 4 of you guys to share the generosity that you've felt over this past year from the community. And so let's see, let's start with Anne since she finished up last.
We've definitely seen a huge increase in community donations, which has helped so much. We've also seen an increase in food donations as well. People have reached out to us about clothing, you know, just any item they think that we might be able to use. We've really seen an increase of donations overall in kind and monetary. We really also, we've never done Thanksgiving meals in, I think, 20+ years. It was being done through another organization. And this year, because of COVID, we were able to do Thanksgiving, and just the outpour of all the community members with that meal was just, we were blown away. And so I just can't tell you, I mean, staff was just, we just felt so loved. And I just want to thank everybody for what they've been doing. We've also seen additional funding through COVID grants, and that's happened both locally through the Community Foundation, and also some of our other grantors who kind of just saw our newsletter or saw what we were doing and reached out and said, hey, you know, we want to help. So I feel like we've seen a huge outpour with food security. So thank you.
Great, thanks. And Matt?
I'd say similarly, you know, when this year started, we were really worried. When this whole pandemic began, when everything started shutting down, we were very, very worried because at the end of the day, a lot of the funding that we receive from individuals, from foundations, it's ultimately derived from investment income or business income. And seeing as we, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought in general in our economy, investments and business are both going to go down. We were worried that we were also going to feel the repercussions of that and see contractions and what we had to work with. But we were just blown away and completely surprised by the outpouring, which is a great word for it, of support from our community, of support from the community foundation, of support from individuals here, of longtime donors, of new donors, of people from around the state and foundations from around the state who reached out and said, look, we know what you're doing is tough. We know nobody else is doing what you're doing. And we know that the clients that you're working with really need what you're doing. So we want to help. And because of that, we actually ended up having a very successful year as far as donations went, as far as grant seeking went, and ended the year on a good note, strong, in a good position to continue forward into 2021. But yeah, we're so grateful. I mean, it's, I cannot tell you last year at this time, COVID hadn't started yet. So I was probably, and it had just been snow down like the previous weekend. So I was like, oh, I'm having a great time. But last year, in like just almost a year ago in March, I can tell you, I was like pulling my hair out at night. I was very stressed, and the outpouring of support that we received, all the generosity we've been fortunate enough to get, it's just blown us all away. So thank you to everybody.
Great. And before I go on to Pam, I would encourage all 4 of these executive directors to look at the chat. There are some people that are offering some assistance, would like to get involved. And so make sure you jot down or maybe chat them up, if you will. So Pam, can you share with us a little bit?
So we formed as a group. We did not even an organization. Years ago, we formed under the notion of when everybody shares, nobody goes without. So we thought everybody's got something to share. So if everybody shares, nobody goes without. And for the first 3 years of being organizing, that's all we talked about was we're just going to share. Our mission statement is just share, And we thought that if we just, whatever we took in, we would share back out, and we wouldn't try to get very big. We'd share to the extent that we could. And man, has that paid off this year. So 60% of our budget this year came from folks in the Pine River Valley and local donations. We do seek foundation grants, statewide grants, but we do not fundraise, particularly in Durango. We want to respect the good work that's going on in nonprofits in that area. So we don't conduct food drives in the Durango proper area or be in direct competition with our good partners over there around food security issues. So the 60% of our budget that we made off of local donations came from people in the Pine River Valley. So we're really excited about that this year. And then we're really pleased with grant and working with the foundations that we've been working with in the past. Some of them we didn't even have to ask or write a grant. They just gave us the money and said, be well and go forth and do well. So, and I'm very appreciative of the foundation, community foundation, for all kinds of things, not just money, but the solidarity and the advice and consultation that we get in hand holding when we're wringing our hands. So we live in a very generous community. One of the things that I just get so much pleasure out of is seeing the food line, hundreds of cars lined up, 100 cars lined up outside on Monday, and knowing that they're living right next door to a neighbor who may have given us a financial contribution the day before that enabled us to serve them. And so it's kind of money in and money out. It's just a beautiful dynamic thing. And I'm very grateful to be a part of all that. So thank you. Thank you for your support.
And Sarah, do you want to wrap this one up?
Sure. So I would say the same applies for us as everybody else. One thing that was really touching for me during COVID was the labor force that came through for us in the form of volunteers. So as an organization that relied primarily, so 95% on volunteers, we were really devastated when our labor force disappeared because most of them were retirees who were in that at-risk category and were fearful of being here and being exposed. We were super excited to be able to put out an ask to this community and have so many people from the younger population who maybe were not working during that specific stay-at-home time who stepped up and came in and then continued on after they went back to work. So we were able to really build our volunteer base, which was an amazing opportunity for us to reach a different group of people. And we're so excited about the time when we can all merge together and we can introduce our previous volunteers with our newer group of volunteers and really have just this A team of people who are giving one of the most valuable things a person can give, because after all, none of us get time back, right? Once we expend it, it's gone. So we're so grateful for the outpouring of time. And I think that's probably the same with each of each of the agencies here on this panel today. I think we've probably all seen similar situations like that. So that's something that's been really touching for us, and we're always looking for more volunteers and other people to join this team and partner with us. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Gwen, I think that's a great way to wrap up. I think we've addressed most of the things in the chat. Is there anything that you would like to ask of this group?
I don't think so. I just let everybody know we have a copy of the chat, so there's a lot of information in there rather than you necessarily trying to write that down. What I'll do is after the meeting, I'll send out the chat itself. And I also downloaded Sarah's slide deck. So if you're interested in that, you can let me know. So I'd like to thank Brigham and all of our panelists for taking their time. And before everybody leaves, once we give them a virtual round of applause, I'm just going to tell you what's coming up for the club luncheon schedule. And I've got an announcement from one person. So let's just give them a big hand right now. And I mean, not only thanks for being here, but thanks for everything that you're doing. Karen McManus has an announcement that she'd like to make. So Karen, if you can unmute, go ahead.
Thank you, Gwen, and thank you for this very important program. The League of Women Voters wants to give everyone a heads up that we're going to be sponsoring a candidate forum for the April 6th election of Durango City Council members, and it will be an evening in March. We'll be confirming the date as soon as the application deadline is reached on February 9th. So stay tuned. We'll be sending the information to broadly to the Democratic Club and elsewhere. And we hope you'll join us for this very important information about candidates. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. And we really appreciate what the League of Women Voters do through the year. And there's a lot of really good things. And that kind of fits in. We are also doing in March, the March 2nd for our club lunch. And we're also going to have a forum for the Durango City Council candidates. And we've gotten positive feedback from all of them so far. Again, as Karen said, we won't know exactly who's running until the deadline there. I also wanted to tell you about April 6th, and the speaker we will have is Mark Rudd. And some of those of you who are old like me may remember that name. He was an activist, was part of the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, and I think he's got some really interesting things to talk to us about. And I mentioned Lauren Boebert, and he said he might talk about her a little bit and the Second Amendment. So that could be a really interesting thing. We'll see how that goes. May 4th, we expect to have a forum with the La Plata Electric Association candidates. Again, we don't know who's running quite yet. And then on June 1st, Lori Meininger is going to give us a presentation. She has quite a resume. She's going to talk about the state of the state. And then we're still trying to fill in some of the other luncheons through the end of the year. So does anybody have any other announcements that need to be made? Okay, if not, we really appreciate everybody coming. This was actually a very good crowd. We had about 40 participants at the peak. And so thanks everybody, and we'll hope to see you next month. Have a great day.